Hi, for this video I want to be talking about the very recent Penn State child sexual abuse scandal that's been covering national news. This is a topic that's close to home given that I am a student at Penn State, so I want to give a little bit of insight into what I think has been going on. Last night Joe Paterno was fired, so was Graham Spanier, and then we had the notorious riots that have been covered by news media. But I want to put a lot of this into perspective and try to offer a different kind of commentary about what the situation is. So first, we have to address the three main things that are at stake here. 1, Penn State University. 2, child sexual abuse. And 3, the notion and issue of a scandal. So first, this obviously involves Penn State University, and there's so much more to Penn State than football. It's a great Tier 1 research university. There's wonderful academics that are going on, and even philanthropy, where students at Penn State last year generated over $9 million to fund research to help cure pediatric cancer. So there's all these great things that are going on, but it is undeniable that a major part of the Penn State culture and reputation and image revolves around football. And it revolves around football, and so it also involves Joe Paterno, who has become the face of Penn State football and made the university so much of what it is over the past half a century. Okay, so we're talking about real big issues of loyalty, pride, school spirit, dedication, commitment, true, genuine love that has made people be completely dedicated and associated to Penn State football, preserving that image and that reputation and everything that it means to people. I mean, people say they bleed blue and white, and it is true. So we're talking about not something that's superficial, but something very significant for people's identity, sense of community, sense of belonging, etc. All of that is not a big deal until you get an issue like child sexual abuse in the mix. So thanks to Sandusky and his involvement with the athletic department when he was officially involved, he has brought not just an issue of sexual abuse on the Penn State campus, but affiliated it with that core part of the Penn State identity and pride, football. Thus, therefore, implicating lots of other people who are in the athletic department too. I think this is significant because if it had been any other individual, or an individual affiliated with another element or realm of the university, like, say, I don't know, like an engineering department or something, the situation when it had come to light would probably have been handled very differently, so that the issue would focus on that particular perpetrator, and there wouldn't be so much at stake, like maybe the individual's reputation, but it wouldn't hinge so fully on the reputation of the university at large, because we're not talking about football. But since we are talking about Penn State football and the people who are involved in the athletic department, this perpetuated something like a crime into a scandal. And so we get the scandal because I think it's football, where so much of the reputation and the image is at stake. Then people have an interest in covering over things or trying to stifle the voices of those who might cause a ruckus and really disturb and, I don't know, undermine a reputation that affects thousands and thousands of people, not to mention generates millions of dollars. So preventing Sandusky from becoming the next head coach and telling him to stop taking showers with young boys was part of the action that was taken against him, but clearly most people agree that there are serious moral failings on part of all of those who were involved in addressing the situation for what it was. And the failure to address the needs of the victims, to protect their rights and their interests, and everything else that was involved in the history that's reported in the grand jury report, leads to a participation in a cover-up of these heinous crimes. So lots of people are involved here, not just Sandusky, and not just even like the people who are within the athletic department like Joe Paterno or Graham Spanier, the former president. Lots of people are involved. Their actions and their failures to act are involved, and their failure to notify others, if nothing else, to speak up, and most importantly, to follow up. All of these issues and oversights and failures have contributed to the situation becoming what it is now. So with that in mind, we have to then ask, how is it that we can have so many inadequacies across the board in terms of how various different individuals respond to a situation? How can we account for the fact that people should have done more, but they didn't? Those are the questions we should ask. So like I said, there are accountability issues that fall on the heads of many different individuals, but I think we need to pay attention to a bigger issue, which is that these are individuals who are in relationship to an institution and an entity like Penn State football. And when institutional structures turn into something that is so big as Penn State football, that entity can carry a life of its own. It gets its own momentum. And at some point, the interests of the institution can often overstep the specific particular individual human needs and interests. And this relationship between the power and influence of an institution and an individual, I think, makes it exceptionally difficult for individuals to be able to speak out and do the right thing, even if there's a question of, in their mind of like, maybe I should do something. So again, I'm not trying to let the individuals who are involved off the hook, but I'm trying to draw attention to the ways that those individuals are related and implicated within greater institutions and structures that enable and foster moral oversights and then create a lack of accountability. So yes, of course, there are whistleblowers, and we have heard stories about whistleblowers in terms of like Wall Street and corporate greed and that kind of stuff. But whistleblowers are a unique sort of person who I think carry a sense of moral conviction and fortitude and backbone that very, very, very few people have. So, not to say I think we should have more whistleblowers. That would be wonderful. But this relationship between institutions and how that squelches the power of voices of individuals and maybe inhibits them from actually doing what they should do morally is what I'm concerned about. So I'm saying that individuals can be overwhelmed by the institutional power and structures on a couple of ways that make them silent. So one, literally, the institution, if that's what you're going against, can overwhelm one's voice to such a point that the individuals are no longer really able to speak credibly. So if you are a sort of David going against the Goliath, then you have a lot at stake, and there are plenty of powers that can be put up against you to make sure that you don't disrupt the order of things. Those individuals probably have a lot to lose. So think of like the janitors, for instance, who might have heard about something going on. They have their jobs to lose, very little external support to help them make a case, and there are plenty of other mechanisms in place that will silence whatever it is that they start to raise. So that certain claims of perhaps even individuals can, like children, can be dismissed or dealt with in ways that quiet whatever ruckus they're about to stir up. And hence the quieting is the scandalous part. So while this isn't an issue about Joe Pa, this is a crime that Sandusky committed against children, and that should still be one of the key focuses of all this. But it's the case that Joe Pa has come up in the media coverage and in so much of the, hostility and division that's happened in State College, because he was a central player in this. And when we have a relationship of a David versus a Goliath, those little seemingly powerless individuals don't have as much an effect as those who are in greater positions of power and leadership. So Joe Paterno is one who could influence a whole community and actually could speak out against on behalf of victims in the face of an institution like Penn State football, because he's like the heart and soul of it. So I think that there is a great responsibility that falls on the shoulders of people like Joe Paterno and the former president now, Graham Spanier. Okay, but with that said, the other way that this individual relationship to an institution silences or removes our ability to do the right thing is by creating a systemic structure so that people then are only expected to talk to the next person in the chain of command. So Joe Paterno, again, not to bring him up to make him the forefront, but he is an excellent case study here. Legally, he reported to the people who he needed to report to. So he fulfilled his legal obligations, but so many people saying that he didn't fulfill his moral obligations because he should have done more. But if institutionally we set up the telephone chain where all you have to do is report to the next person, then I think we let ourselves off of the hook way too easily. It's easy to say, I did what I could do. I didn't know what else I even could do at all, actually. And thus we remove ourselves from having a heightened sense of moral responsibility and accountability, and further, we probably limit our ability to see what we actually could do, because all we can imagine, thanks to the way that the systems are set up, is we can only imagine that we could talk to the person right there next to us. So even the system itself can be inhibiting and disempowering for people to be able to speak out. So the critical point is that I think institutions are shaping our attitudes and our moral actions and our abilities to actually act at all. And this is a systemic problem that's at stake with how institutions are run and the power that institutions are able to maintain, or cultural entities like Penn State football, reputations on the line. So where accountability is dissolved, people with less power and less influence are often become the victims who are unprotected, and their interests are no longer served. So I think that the Occupy Wall Street movement highlights this sort of structure very well, that we realize that the people who are at the top are making bad decisions that are harming and affecting those who are sort of at the bottom of the rungs of power. So in terms of like the riots that happened and everything, the 2,000 to 3,000 students who decided to riot over Penn State firing, the Board of Trustees firing Joe Paterno and Graham Spanier, but mostly Joe Paterno, I think that that's, first of all, a very small fraction of the university, and there are plenty of people here who are being more thoughtful about this whole situation. But what this highlights is that we need to be able to speak to individuals, one another, in ways that help cultivate a sense of moral accountability. Not only that, but I think that oftentimes people have a failure to see ethical decisions when they encounter them. That we don't see ourselves as making moral, ethical decisions all the time. Or when we do, we don't know how to handle them. And so this involves something like a call for developing moral literacy, or an ability to have an ethical sensibility. And then once we can see that there are ethical situations that we're confronted with all the time, we have to also be able to foster strong moral backbones in each other so that we feel empowered to be able to do the right thing and not be disempowered against very, very large things like a culture that we're a part of. So rather than having those students who wanted to riot to feel like they were a part of something, and who wanted to show support and loyalty to Joe Paterno, I think we have to aim to cultivate a sense of responsibility and a culture within universities and students that support the movement for those to have the courage to step outside of the thoughtless mobs, to actually be able to step outside of the crowd, think, and have the strength to say, this is what is right, so I'm going to stand up for it, and then for them to be able to initiate movements so that we can actually have people taken to the streets to be able to rally and protest and draw attention to the things that truly matter, like standing out against the sexual abuse of children, among so many other things. So I hope that we use this opportunity that has come to light thanks to Penn State and this whole scandal to try to recognize that we have things we have to do that call for moral action. Hindsight is 20/20, or whatever the saying goes, and we would know better. We wish we would have done more, but how can we facilitate the ability in us today to be able to do more when the opportunity presents itself to us? Thanks.